Welcome to week 6 of the Penn Memory Center's Caring for the Caregiver class. This is Felicia Greenfield, and I'm here today to talk to you about communicating with your support team and planning for the future. So just a quick recap. After reviewing caregiving and dementia, we talked about how to identify and change unhelpful thoughts. We talked about tracking our moods and how our thoughts and behaviors influence mood. We shared skills for engaging in effective communication. We talked about becoming a behavioral detective and learning how to make changes to what happens before or after a behavior so that you can modify the environment or your response. Last week, we focused on meaningful activity engagement. I hope that you've had a chance to practice all of the skills that you learned so far in this class and that you're able to describe ways in which the caregiving experience is starting to improve once you've been able to apply these skills and strategies to your day-to-day situations. We also shared some relaxation techniques. You learned the signal breath that you can use anywhere at any time. You learned the 20 breaths, which is a great way to kind of reset and transition from one environment to another. We listened to music and you learned how to bring your attention to the present moment through a piece of music to get out of your head. And then last week we focused on receiving and sending loving kindness through a loving kindness meditation. Today's session is called Communicating with Your Support Team and Planning for the Future. It's a little less interactive, but I am going to ask you to have your journal ready, and there will be a few activities for you to reflect on, and at the conclusion of this session, you will be eligible to enroll in a support group. I recognize that the people who are able to attend the either live in person or virtual classes, this experience can be more enriching for them because they have other people to share with and receive support from. But you will have an opportunity to attend a support group after this if that is something that you are interested in. So, we're going to talk today about how to express ourselves effectively. And this time it's not really communicating with your loved one with dementia, but with their doctors or other people in your life that you could benefit from help from. So we all have different ways of getting our points across to people that we're communicating with. Speaking up for our needs or being assertive can be very difficult when we're experiencing stress. Additionally, when we're feeling stressed, we may not have the energy to talk to others about our needs, or we may not believe that we're worthy of getting what we want. Being assertive requires some straightforward skills that don't come naturally to everyone. So you see this continuum of communication styles below, starting from passive, going towards aggressive. So each of these styles demonstrates a different level of respect for the other person's boundaries or rights in whom we're communicating with. And we're going to explore this a little bit more. So we're going to start at the left arrow of our continuum with passive communication. Passive communication involves failing to express our feelings honestly. Instead, thoughts and feelings are expressed indirectly and apologetically, leading others to easily disregard us. Passive communication allows others to violate our rights and shows a lack of respect for our own needs. People who are passive communicators seek to please others and avoid conflict at any cost. It sends this message: I don't count. You can take advantage of me. My feelings don't matter. Only yours do. Here is an example of passive communication. Sylvia takes care of her husband who has memory problems. Sylvia has arranged for her brother Daniel to stay with her husband while she attends a weekly 1-hour exercise class. An hour before she's scheduled to attend class, Daniel calls to say he changed his mind and he won't be coming after all. Sylvia responds by saying, "That's okay. I didn't really need to go to class after all." She begins to think that perhaps she's being selfish for asking to take some time away from the house at all. After all, she's sure Daniel has his own problems. Okay, so that's one example of a passive communication style. And we're going to move to the other end of the arrow, the right end of the continuum, to aggressive communication now. People who are aggressive communicators stand up for their own rights and expresses their own thoughts in inappropriate ways, often yelling or attacking. Aggressive communicators violate the boundary of the other person and seeks to force the other person to lose. It sends this message: this is what I want, and you're stupid for disagreeing. Your feelings and wants don't count. Only mine do. So back to our example. If Sylvia was an aggressive communicator, she might respond to Daniel's decision not to come by saying, "I'm sick and tired of you always giving me a hard time. You're so unreliable. You've always been this way. How could you be so thoughtless? Don't bother coming for Thanksgiving." Here's a little cartoon for you inserted in here. So just go ahead and read that on your own. So assertive communication is the goal. This is communication in the middle of the continuum. It involves standing up for your own personal rights without violating the other person's rights. It involves expressing your thoughts directly and honestly. It involves two types of respect: those for your own needs and feelings, and those of the other person's needs and feelings. Assertive communication increases the chances that your requests are heard correctly, which will lead to a better result. And finally, assertive communication engages you in a process of problem solving and negotiation. So in the next slide, we're going to go back to Sylvia's example, and then I'm going to ask you to have your journals ready and give you a little writing prompt. So in this example, after Daniel says he's not coming, Sylvia takes a second to get a deep breath in and out. She uses her signal breath. And then she says, Daniel, it's very important to my health that I get a break from caregiving. I'd like to talk to you about this and try to work something out. Okay, so now it opens the door. It's not shutting either of them out. It opens up to the door to a conversation and possible negotiation. So now I'd like you to pause this recording and pull out your journal and think about your communication style. Do you think that you tend to be passive, aggressive, or assertive? And how can you modify your communication style so that you are allowing for an open, honest, respectful conversation and negotiation with someone when you need help? So just as an aside, I hear a lot of times that people won't ask others for help. They don't want to be a burden to their kids. They don't want to ask a friend. I hear it constantly. And then when I talk to folks about asking for help, and they realize that people are really more often than not, people are willing to help. They just don't really know how to help unless they're asked directly. And so on the next slide, we're going to talk about tips for asking for help, using assertive communication to get the help you need. So when you're asking for help, make it specific. For example, can you please call your brother on Mondays from 12 to 1? Okay, so that's 1 hour. You're asking specifically for an amount of time and a specific commitment. Explain specifically why this is helpful to you and your loved one. Take opportunities to provide education, which builds empathy. Avoid thinking of requests as either or. Stay open to negotiation and compromise. Stick to the present issue. Do not raise issues from the past. Don't say things like, you never show up for me, right? So that's going to shut someone down. That's not going to be an incentive for that person to help you. Also prepare them for what they may encounter in terms of language, behaviors, etc., and tell them how to handle these situations. So this is if someone agrees to help you, prep them so that they're not afraid and maybe won't come back again. So they'll need a little bit of encouragement and preparation from you. In class, we have an activity. It's called Broken Record Technique, and I pair people up with a partner and I have them ask for help with using these strategies here. And if they're being met with resistance, I ask them to repeat. They're kind of repeating just slight variations on the theme about why their request is so important and how if it were trivial, you wouldn't ask. And people have found this practice helpful. So if you're able to practice with someone in your family or a friend on asking for help, go ahead and practice asking before you do it in real time. Okay, so another tip is to explain how you'd like them to bow out if they need to. So, you can give them some coaching. I understand that this may become unmanageable. If you're not able to come anymore, please let me know a few days in advance so I can arrange for an alternative. So that you're not let down if they kind of cancel at the last minute. You're asking them in advance not to cancel at the last minute. So if you're still learning to ask for help verbally and this is difficult for you, there are tools online. One is called Lots of Helping Hands and the other one's called Caring Bridge. Caring Bridge was designed for cancer, but these are tools that you can invite people in your care network to sign up for specific tasks or respite. So you might be able to do this naturally, but you might feel you want to check out these resources for help communicating your needs with others moving forward. And then finally, you want to express gratitude often and regularly. Okay, I'm going to read you another practice example and then ask you to journal afterwards. Sam says, I don't understand why my daughter won't come around more than once a month or so. I mean, she lives in the same neighborhood as us. How hard could it be to stop by and see her mother? These are the last years of her mother's life. Doesn't she want to spend more time with her? I know she's busy with work, but this is only just an hour out of her day. The other day she texted me, let me know if there's anything you need. I can swing by the grocery store and pick up some food for you. But that's not the kind of help I need. My wife loves to go grocery shopping as an outing. Then I saw on Facebook that she'd posted how hard it is to watch her mom decline. What? Hard for her? She never sees her. I'm the one that lives here. So that's just a brief scenario about the maybe misunderstanding between Sam and his daughter and the kind of help she wants to provide and the kind of help that he needs and how there's a conflict here. So I want you to take a few minutes in your journal to reflect on the things that you would suggest to Sam to help him communicate more effectively with his daughter. What are some areas in your own communication style that you would like to modify or enhance? And what are some barriers? Where are you stuck in getting there? Go ahead and pause this recording and spend a few minutes reflecting on the communication that we talked about in this section so far. Also, helping Sam out, and then reflecting on your own communication. Thank you for reflecting. Now you have something to work with, to think about in asking for help moving forward. Would love to hear about your examples in office hours, or if you sign up for a support group after this class. We're going to shift gears a little bit from communicating with your support team at home to communicating with your doctor. And this is really maybe your partner's doctor, the person for whom you're caring. But you can also use some of these tips to communicate with your own doctor as well. So prior to your doctor's appointment, write down all of your questions in a list and bring that to the appointment with you. Order the list from the most important to the least important in case you're unable to address everything in that appointment. This will help you be efficient in your appointment and get all of your questions answered while you're there. Also, be clear and concise when you speak to your doctor. If you want to discuss a change in the person for whom you're caring's status, have specific examples in mind to illustrate it. If you can't describe something verbally, consider taking a video on your phone to show before the appointment to show the doctor what it is you're trying to communicate. Ask your doctor how they prefer to communicate in between appointments. At the Memory Center, our appointments are spaced out maybe 6, 9, or 12 months. The idea is that people are being followed regularly by their primary care physician or geriatrician, and that they're coming to the Memory Center for memory appointments only. And we know memory progression is slow, so our appointments are further in between. However, you might have some questions you want to ask your doctor. So find out, do they prefer email? Do they prefer phone? I know that our doctors prefer our MyPen Medicine, which is our health system's electronic medical record portal. When you send a message in the MyPen Medicine portal, a number of people get that message. So the doctor, the physician's assistant, and people will respond to you within, I think it's within, 2 business days. Get to know the support staff at your doctor's office. At the Memory Center, there's a team of social workers, Allison, Lynn, and myself. We have interns every year that are trained to work to support you. And we actually just hired a new full-time social worker named Leah Fine. So we're here to help with kind of problem-solving behavioral management issues. A nurse or physician's assistant can help you with medication management or refills. And then the receptionists at any doctor's office are always wonderful people to get to know, and will be very helpful when treated kindly and compassionately by you and the other patients. When you're communicating with your doctors, recognize that not all questions have answers and not all problems have solutions. This is just something, doctors are not, they're not infallible. They're not magicians. They don't always have all the answers. And so it's important to understand that and work with them, when you're working to take care of the person for who has the illness. Also, educate yourself about the illness. The fact that you're taking this class demonstrates your willingness to educate yourself. And also, kind of in line with number 6, have realistic expectations about what your doctor can do. Okay, so we're talking about a disease with no real cure, and very little by way of medication treatment. So just kind of understand that and work with the team in the ways in which they're able to help you solve your problems. All right, we're on to our final topic, which is planning for the future. Many of you may have started planning for the future. Some of you may not have. So this is just a brief overview because the future care planning is very specific and individualized. So I'm going to be talking in broad strokes here. Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are unpredictable, and progression looks different for every individual. However, the more planning you can do in advance, the less you'll have to do in times of crisis and as the stress develops as your loved one's disease progresses. So an ideal care plan should have multiple options. So for example, here's a typical plan. Plan A, I'm going to keep my loved one at home with me for the duration of their life, and I'm going to be the one providing care. Plan B, keep my loved one at home with me for the duration of their life, and when I can no longer provide the care they need, I'll bring in additional help from a friend or a professional. Plan C, if neither plan A nor plan B is working and I absolutely can't do this anymore for the safety of myself or my loved one, my plan would be to move them into an assisted living or memory care facility or other skilled nursing facility, depending on the need. So remember, there's no one size fits all approach. And there's no one right way to plan for the future. So whether you choose to care for someone in their own home or place them in a facility, it has no bearing on whether you're a good caregiver. Individuals with dementia can do well in either setting, given the proper supports. Another thing, this may be too late, but something I like to talk to people about is never make a promise to a loved one that you'll keep them at home forever, because a promise is hard to break. And if you make that promise, you might really struggle with your decision to move them if the time comes. So I would just ask you to keep an open mind and say that you'll try everything in your power to keep them at home for you. But let's be realistic. Sometimes that's just not possible. So in the very first class, I read some statistics about the cost of care. It's very expensive, and I want to talk to you about how to pay for care. So Medicare, most people who are 65 and older have Medicare. Medicare covers 80% of doctors' visits, covers hospitalization, some medication, and short-term skilled nursing for like somebody who needs rehabilitation. What this means is that if somebody's hospitalized and needs to rehab, either at home or in a facility, Medicare will cover a few weeks, like a finite amount of time until that person gets better. Medicare covers 80%. Most people will have a secondary insurance that covers the remaining 20%. But what Medicare and secondary insurances do not cover is in-home dementia care. So long-term in-home help from a professional caregiver is not covered by Medicare. Medicare also doesn't cover assisted living facilities, memory care facilities, or skilled nursing facilities. So the only way to pay for these things is out of pocket, unless you have a long-term care policy. I'm finding fewer and fewer people have these days, but if you have a long-term care facility, you will want to contact them to find out what their payment structure is like. Also, Medicaid will cover some in-home help as well as skilled nursing. But to be Medicaid eligible, you have to meet criteria, and that's found online, but it's something like the person can have no more income than $2,200 a month coming in. If they own a home, the home can be taken by the state to repay Medicaid. If a loved one, if a spouse is living in a home, the state can't take the home. So these are complicated, and I suggest doing a little bit of research online to see about coverage, and also contacting an elder attorney who can help you kind of explain the process and maybe protect some of your assets so that you can become Medicaid eligible if you need to. For in-home care, it goes to your area agency on aging. I put PCA down here, that's Philadelphia Corporation of Aging, but depending on what county you're in, your county area agency on aging will cover some in-home costs and in-home care costs from a professional if you meet the criteria. And you can always email me if you have more questions on any of these items. One more plug, since we're talking about Medicare covers 80%. I talked about the secondary covering 20%. I watch TV at night sometimes, and I see these commercials for Advantage plans, Medicare Advantage plans. I don't really recommend them. They are cheaper. They have a lower monthly premium, but they don't cover as much. They don't cover as much in terms of medication or care if needed, particularly mental health care. So do your due diligence. If you're considering taking an Advantage plan, I would spend some time educating myself on what they do cover, what they don't cover, and make sure that you're making the right choice for you, even if the monthly premium is a little bit higher with Medicare as your primary insurance. So if you're about to start creating a care plan, or if you've started one and you want to continue it, I just want to go over a few general tips. Think about who needs to be involved. Are there people who should be instrumental in helping you? Are there individuals in your life who will need to know about the plan once it's complete but won't be involved in creating it? So think through the players in your life and who should be involved and at what time. Focus on goals. Think about what your ultimate goal is for your loved one's care, and what their goal is for their life, moving forward, and return to this often. Think about what they would want. Think about what your needs are. Acknowledge reality. All of us have different strengths and limitations on our time, energy, and finances. These things will not disappear in the context of Alzheimer's disease. Have a family meeting. If there are more than 2 people involved in care planning, schedule a series of in-person or virtual meetings to make sure everyone's on the same page. Consider using a mediator or facilitator if you're concerned that there may be conflict that you're unprepared to handle alone. We see a lot of different family configurations at the Memory Center with second marriages and kids from first marriages. And I know I've mediated, I've sat in, it can be very complicated. So we acknowledge that, and we ask you to involve them, but involve someone else, a third party if necessary. You want to write down your care plan, document it, and keep it in a place that's easily accessible to distribute to any family members or professionals involved in your loved one's care. I want to talk a little bit more about power of attorney. So I do want to encourage you to create a power of attorney. And the next slide is going to get into a little bit more detail on power of attorney, but also consult with an elder law attorney. A good elder law attorney can really help you navigate your care plan for moving forward. So when somebody has dementia, it is likely that eventually they'll need a power of attorney. So if the person still has capacity to designate a power of attorney, I would suggest doing that as soon as possible. So if you are not your loved one's power of attorney yet, please consider having that done sooner rather than later. As the person you're caring for progresses through the stages of dementia, they'll be less able to communicate their decisions. So it's important to have the POA in place before they come incapacitated, which is a legal term that refers to the point where they can no longer manage their own affairs. So there are many types of power of attorney, but the most commonly used amongst caregivers is the durable power of attorney, which allows a designated agent to act on behalf of an individual only once they can no longer act themselves, as designated by at least one doctor. It's also a legal designation. You'll need a lawyer to help you prepare this. Some things you may need power of attorney to access if your loved one is unable to is their bank accounts, their Social Security or other retirement benefits, Medicare, or online patient portal or medical records. So if you don't get power of attorney while the person for whom you're caring is still able to grant you power of attorney, and the lawyer determines that they can't make you power of attorney, then the next step in order to be able to make decisions on that person's behalf is guardianship. And guardianship it can be a long and not very pleasant process. It also costs money, but it's sometimes necessary if you have to make decisions on your loved one's behalf. So power of attorney is least painful and kind of the easiest route to go. So I would encourage you to check on that and make some choices sooner rather than later. You may also want to consider working with your loved one to create a living will or a document that states their medical wishes if they're no longer able to communicate them. Decisions that may be discussed in a living will include the use of artificial nutrition, ventilator, CPR, or pain management methods. Anyone can create a living will. It does not have to be prepared by an attorney. There are lots of tools to help walk you through the process. One that we use at Penn is called My Care Wishes, and the website is www.ourcarewishes.org, and it walks you through decisions about medical treatment, quality of life, and funeral arrangements. I kind of don't like that we're just ending on that note, but this is the content of the class. So I want to thank you for your attention and for taking this course. It's the first time we've recorded these lectures, and so I welcome your feedback, any critical feedback that'll help me make it better for future classes. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you're interested in joining a monthly caregiver group, also email that to me and I will get you in touch with the process for doing so. And because there are so many of you taking this class, I might be bombarded and overwhelmed with email inquiries. So please be patient with me. And also I may delegate some of your questions to some of my colleagues to reply. I also, if you have not visited the Alzheimer's Association website yet, please do, www.alz.org. And the Alzheimer's Association also has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline, 1-800-272-3900. Doctors' offices are open generally 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday. So if something should happen on a weekend and you really need immediate assistance, don't hesitate to call this hotline. And they have trained operators around the clock there to help you if needed. So again, thank you very much, and I hope to meet you in person or at least virtually through the office hours or at a future support group. Be well.